Just a couple of guys, a couple of microphones, and a heck of a lot of no. It's Football on the No with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the No. I am Jim McPhee, and right there is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Know-It-Alls? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the No Show. Jim, I am super jacked for tonight's episode because we are getting so close to draft time, and it's it's in 8 days. It's less than 8 days. Like, it's super exciting time for every fan base. This is the ample opportunity in the offseason to make your roster better, or if you miss, nothing changes. So
that is one big pile of shit.
Exactly. So, without further ado, Jimmy, how you doing, my guy?
Good. Getting better and better every day. Last night was a good one. We were on the Blindside Blitz last night. If you guys don't know about that show, you guys got to go to YouTube and check out Grumblings Media. Check out Blindside Blitz. We're right there. So there's a big promo shot for that show. We were doing a mock draft with Roderick David, and it was amazing. We're very good time. So that video will be posted again. So check that stuff out.
Yeah, for the people
but we're
that
good.
Don't know who Roderick David is a former NFL scout, guy who's been in the war room, has been there, done that. He scouts prospects every year, amongst other things. Like, now he even has his own business to where he talks to prospects about the everyday process and helps them along the way through the journey. So
right, where he was even saying that he's like doing a lot more homework on the 2026 draft right now. That's how far ahead these guys scout and stuff like that. So he's planning on the 2026. He's already done his homework on 25 last year. So, I mean, it's amazing what these guys do all the time.
and
how
that's
busy they
that's
are.
just the process. Like, there's no stopping for the scouts. Like, they're always continuing to work. So but yeah, and Roderick David still does it to this day. And we gained a lot of knowledge so far. We've had him on the our other show there, Blindside Blitz, a few times already, and every time he gets on there, like, we always learn something new from him. So whether it be like the process in the war room or even some things that we never even thought about, he definitely does add a lot to the show for sure.
Absolutely, Joe. So, all right. So tonight it's gonna be a quick one, but we're gonna go through your top tens again. We've been doing the top tens every week. Now it's getting closer and closer to crunch time here, and the draft is next week, so we're doubling up to try and make sure we get all those lists in there so people can check them out too and study before, if they don't know some of these guys before they get into it. Everybody's hearing the same top guys, all in the first round, stuff like that, but a lot of other people don't know about the other talent that's out there and are ill-informed. So what we're doing here is Joe always goes through, does the work. He's his own scout too as well, and does his top 10s. So tonight we're handling defensive backs and defensive linemen. Right off the bat, Joe, we're going to start off with your top 10 defensive linemen. Let's hear it. Let's go.
All right, so real quick, we're just going to get right through this. We're not going to waste any time. If anybody is checking it out and wants to ask a question, either about somebody that I named in my top 10 or maybe another player, feel free to do so down below. But number 10, I'm going to start off real quick. I'm going to go with Derek Harmon, D tackle from Oregon. This guy has been kind of ascending, especially late as we approach the draft. The guy that does everything extremely well at D tackle is an absolute monster in the middle. Number 9, I got James Pierce Jr. He's an edge rusher out of Tennessee. Still needs some more development, but man, this guy has elite traits. So whoever wants to kind of pick him and see how far they can go with him, he would be an excellent addition. 8, Shamar Stewart, D end out of Texas A&M. A guy doesn't have a lot of production, but man, he's another guy that has some really nice traits that you would like to utilize. Could be a steal, depending on who grabs him. Number 7 got Kenneth Grant, the D tackle from Michigan. Not a lot of people have this guy in their top 10, but I think this guy has some untapped potential in the pass rush game, and he's already stellar at run defense. Number 6, I got Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College, another elite type of edge guy who doesn't really get brought up a ton, doesn't get spoken too much about, but man, he's another guy that to keep your ears and eyes out for because I know that there's going to be teams that love his attributes. Number 5, I got Walter Nolan, D tackle from Mississippi, aka Ole Miss. Love Walter Nolan. I think he could be very easily the second D tackle taken in this draft. Has a little bit of off the field issues. We'll see if he can overcome that. But then we get to number 4, Mike Green from Marshall. Mike Green is such a special, prospect coming out. I'm very curious to see how high he goes or to what team does in fact take him. Number 3, Jalen Walker. Now I put Jalen Walker in the D line position group because after hearing from Roderick David, and if you missed that mock draft that we had last night on Blindside Blitz, we encourage you to go over to Grumblings Media and check that out because we had some great conversations. We alternated picks, got some great insight by Roderick David. Definitely check that out. And this is the reason why I have Jalen Walker here at 3 overall in terms of D lineman because he's seen by a lot as an edge rusher. But man, by hearing from Roderick David that the fact that he can be a full time guy at linebacker and just be an absolute menace on the defensive side. Number 2, I got Mason Graham, D tackle from Michigan. Um, I mean, the guy's just special. He's definitely the number 1 D tackle and is definitely should be anyway a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft. And then number 1, the obvious one, Abdul Carter, defensive end from Penn State, very gifted elite type of player. He's my number 1 overall player. And it's no surprise that he ends up on top of the heap of this one. So that is my top 10. Anybody that's in the comments, anybody that wants to ask any questions, whether it be about my top 10, do you have a differing opinion? Would you, is there someone that I missed that you said that you think should be in that top 10? Make sure you drop in the comments down below. Love to hear from you guys.
All right, next up, Joe, let's get to your next list. You've got defensive backs, Joe's top 10 defensive backs here of the 2025 draft.
Okay, so DBs, this is another really hard top 10 to do because we're combining like edge and D tackle in the other one, and now we're combining safeties and corners, slots, outside. So without further ado, number 10, I have Jacob Parrish from Kansas. This is a guy that I've had my eyes on for quite some time. I love this kid. This kid can play slot for you. He will be seen as an elite slot corner if he gets drafted, depending on where he gets drafted, maybe the second round. That's kind of what I'm expecting. I wouldn't be surprised though if he ends up in the bottom of the first round somewhere. But very good player that not a lot of people are giving enough praise to. Number 9, I got Will Johnson from Michigan. Early on, I had Will Johnson as my number 1 corner, but after doing some homework, after hearing some information from other people like Roderick David, I've dropped him in my top 10. Now he's sitting at 9, and really the for the most part, it's because 1, we still don't have a clear cut answer on just how fast is he. That's been a big question for him. Hasn't run a 40 for teams. We've heard rumors that he runs in the low 4.6s, maybe high 4.5s, but there's been no concrete answer. And the other issue that I have with Will Johnson is the fact that when he plays man, he struggles mightily. It's almost like he's lost. He doesn't have the makeup speed for it. You can tell that on tape. But if you're a zone team, you're going to view Will Johnson a lot higher. He'll probably be your number 1 corner if you're a zone running team, zone defensive team. Will Johnson is elite at zone. So that's where the difference is. Number 8, I got Trey Amos, corner from Ole Miss. A guy who he doesn't have the top end speed. but he's got some speed for his size. Very physical type of corner. The guy has come a long way and has developed his skill set to be a really good, solid corner for whoever does take him. Could sneak into the bottom of the first round. It's possible, but I kind of view him more as a top end second round pick. Number 7, I got Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame. Again, this is another guy that just doesn't get enough praise. Xavier Watts is one of the best safeties coming out, and quite honestly, when it's all said and done, he might end up being the best safety coming out. We're not really sure right now, but what I can tell you is that this dude does everything extremely well. He can run support, he can cover like nobody's business. This guy just seems to be a ball hawk. No matter where the football is, you can guarantee this guy's in the picture and he's making a play on it. So I love Xavier Watts. I'm very curious to see how other teams view him, but I got him at 7. Number 6, I got Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky, blazing fast corner, and that's kind of what automatically draws your attention to him is just how fast he is. One of the fastest, if not the fastest, corner in this draft, and he has all the attributes that you like. He's very quick, very shifty, moves his hips well, kind of glued to the receiver. So again, this is another player that I'm not really sure where he might go. I don't know if he'll make it into the first round, but definitely has the talent to be an impact. Number 5, I got Nick Emanwari, safety out of South Carolina. Going back to last night in our mock draft, Nick Emanwari was drafted in the first round. This would not surprise me. Roderick David, in fact, made that pick, and this is a guy that you can't teach size, 6'3", 220, a huge human being, but plays safety and has 4.3 speed. It just doesn't make any sense. Team that up with the fact that he's a solid tackler, is always around the ball. I like his ceiling. I think he could be something special at the next level. Number 4, I got another safety, Malaki Starks from Georgia. This is pretty much the consensus number 1 safety coming out, and this guy does everything extremely well. You've heard me talk about Xavier Watts and Nick Emanwari. Malaki Starks is kind of a really polished safety, and even though the safety position has kind of been devalued in the draft, normally they don't nobody really takes safeties in the first round unless they're super special, but more times than not, we tend to see them go in the second round. So Lucky Starks, I'm curious to see just how high he goes. I definitely think he's going to be picked in the first round. I'd be surprised if he isn't, but I got him at number 4. Number 3, I have a guy that maybe you might know him, maybe you don't. Savon Ravel Jr. from East Carolina. This is a guy with tremendous length. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got quickness, he's got everything that you like in a tall, long corner. And the, he's had a tough road up to this point. He's lost family members. He's bounced around with schools because of his grades. He's just trying to make it work, and now he has an opportunity to possibly be drafted in the first round, and especially going to be taken in day 2. But this is a very special player that I think had he not have had to bounce around in schools and had he not have to come back from a major injury, that we might be talking about him as the number 1 corner coming out. So I got him at 3 right now. Number 2, I got Jahdae Barron, defensive back from Texas. This is a guy that he's a utility player in your secondary. The guy can play outside, he can play slot, he can play safety even for you. So because of that versatility, I have him as my second best corner, and he does it extremely well. And then number 1, again, much like the last list I told you, this is kind of like the consensus thing, and it makes all the sense in the world. Travis Hunter, corner out of Colorado. This dude is just elite. He just oozes juice. He's so freaking good at everything he does. You can put him in punt return. You can have him as your corner. You can have him as your wide receiver, and he never disappoints. I'm still very curious to see how NFL teams view him, whether they view him as a dual positional player, and can he do that at the next level? Or do they view him as kind of like, basically like whatever you need. Like, okay, we're going to put him at wide receiver or maybe just corner. That's going to be the intriguing thing no matter who ends up taking this guy. He's going to go with the top 3 picks. I'll be shocked if he doesn't. But that's what I have for my top 10 defensive backs for this upcoming draft. And again, just like before, comment down below if you have any questions about some of the players that I said, or if you have maybe even a player that you said, hey, I think this guy deserves to be in your top 10. Just let us know down below.
All right, Joe. Draft is upon us. We talked about it last night. We did mock draft. It was a lot of fun, and there's still questions going on right now with what's going on, who's going to pick what, where's going to go where, and so I figured it'd be fun kind of just talk about draft scenarios, quarterback needy teams. I've got a list of them right there still. So I think not only the fact that where they're drafting, but also the fact that they might be able to trade back into the first round, but then also what do they do when what do they feel about some of these quarterbacks and how the draft is laying out? Do they even trade back and feel like they can still get their quarterback, but then also get some draft capital on top of it? So first of all, I got Pittsburgh listed there though, but we'll go with the Saints first, because I think that's an interesting scenario too, especially with Derek Carr and his injury and things, and where things are lying with the Saints here. Again, so what do you think, what's going on with the situation with the Saints and Derek Carr?
Nobody knows. There's no information. So, I mean, it's anybody's guess at this point. Everyone's kind of alluding to the possibility of the Saints being extra aggressive for quarterback. And whether that means trading down in the first round, gathering picks like you mentioned, and then taking their quarterback that they like, or the opposite way, where they just take the best player available at 9, and then maybe they trade back into the bottom of the first round to take a guy that they really like. I honestly can't see them since they're picking in the top 10, they're picking ninth. I just can't see them with any of these quarterbacks that are all pretty much developmental. I don't see them taking a quarterback at 9. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't. It
Mm-hmm.
it's a possibility that they do trade back, but you got to have a partner, and I think with this draft, there's not a lot of partners out there that are going to really be looking to give up more draft compensation, which is like gold now
Right.
for NFL teams,
Mm-hmm.
to give that up to move up for one player, especially in this draft and how deep it is. So, yes, they would love to acquire more picks, build that roster, and still maybe possibly get their quarterback. But I think the more realistic approach for them, and I understand Mickey Loomis is super aggressive. Whenever he puts his mind to something, he just gets it done. But I hope that's not gonna create a mistake for the Saints. We all know that they've invested in Spencer Rattler from last year,
Mm-hmm.
and he's gonna continue to develop. So it's almost like if that's the mindset, they've already given up on a quarterback that they invested in, and they're not willing to wait to see what the end result is. And I think that's a mistake because now you're rushing into things. I understand that you don't want to necessarily give up on this season, so you're going to go get a quarterback because we're not really sure what's going on with Derek Carr. Does he need surgery? And if he doesn't need surgery, there's also the other part of the story where it just came out today that some executives around the league are speculating that Derek Carr just simply wants out of New Orleans and is doing and saying whatever to make that happen. So, a lot of different information coming out of New Orleans. So, I'm not really sure where we even stand as we approach the draft 8 days away.
Yeah, I mean that's the scenario there too, Joe. It's pretty crazy. A lot of fans I know, they see that some of these other quarterbacks aren't much better or equivalent to Rattler that they already have in house as it is. So they're like, a lot of Saints fans, from what I've heard, had said that why don't we just stick with Rattler then see what we can get and do that instead of even bother at some of these quarterbacks. But again, the talk around New Orleans again with Derek Carr, and unsure of what the scenario is with him and how the longevity and how happy they are moving forward. Could make a difference where they just grab 1, 2 second round. I think they're picking 40th in the second round. So that was like the seventh, eighth, seventh pick. That's eighth pick in the second round. So they get one, and then they have a quarterback competition if, Derek Carr isn't there. But still, I think at one point they do go quarterback. But in the second round, day 2 and Friday, I think is where you're going to see a lot of these chips fall on these quarterbacks. You're going to see probably the rush on it all. Whoever is out there
Well,
still, who's
yeah,
available.
but that's the interesting thing about this draft in particular, because it's not just the Saints that are looking at quarterbacks, especially the top of the second, maybe even trading into that bottom of the first. Because and why is that such a big goal of some teams that are picking high in the second round? It's because if you get into the first round, any draft pick that you select, you get that added fifth year option added to
Mm-hmm.
their contract. You don't
Mm-hmm.
get that in the second round and on. So to have that fifth year option, if the dude in fact pans out, that's pretty nice to have, a little card under your sleeve to where you can continue to have him and keep him for an extra year than otherwise having to automatically just redo a new contract. So and spend that big time money. But you make a good point, because the Saints definitely could trade back in. They could wait at in the second top of the second round and see what happens to fall to them. Maybe there's 2 or 3 quarterbacks that they like, and they're like, you know what? We don't have to trade up. We would like that fifth year option, but man, the asking price is a little too steep for our liking. So we're gonna be comfortable. We're gonna sit here. We're gonna wait to see one of those 3 guys happen to fall to us. We'll take them there. So there's a lot of conversations that are going to be had with that top 10 selections in the second round, because you have the Saints, you even have the Jets, you have the Raiders, you have the Giants, you have any one of these teams in the high end of the first round. We don't expect them to go quarterback because they've already addressed the issue via free agency. But it's gonna be really interesting to see who, in fact, I'm pretty sure this is gonna happen. It's either gonna be 1 or 2 teams that are gonna trade back up into that first round to get a guy that they really like. Just don't know how much are they gonna have to give up, and who that player is. So, it's going to be interesting. We even had the scenario in our mock draft last night from Blindside Blitz
Mm-hmm.
where Shador Sanders slid all the way to 21.
Mm-hmm.
And does Pittsburgh start thinking, if Shador does slide, do they make that decision and say, "Hey, you know what? We didn't anticipate Shador to slide this far. He's here. Nobody traded up to get him. Maybe we make this pick here." If they like him, if they are in love with him, because you got to
Mm-hmm.
be in love with that quarterback. So, or do they just go best player available and he continues to slide? So, very interesting avenues, pathways, options that can definitely happen in this draft. And a lot of people are expecting this to be a very crazy first round.
Right, and that's I think just because of the uncertainty. A
Yeah.
lot of people I heard even today, because you're going to hear this too. Like how many years do you hear this many quarterbacks are getting drafted in the first round? This many good quarter, and then there's a new record set or whatever. Oh no, there's not 5 of them drafted, and so they're going now. It's beefing up again. They're like, oh, so how many is it going to be? 3 under or over? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
they're like, people are like, I'm going 4, all 4 quarterbacks in the first round. And if this is a quarterback, a draft class that isn't as good as previous ones, or
No, it's not.
as of
It's not nowhere close.
I don't see the rush to go ahead and jump into it. I know some teams might be tempted to do something like that, but
Mhm.
with the
Bad,
talent that's
Jim.
also around during in this draft, I think they're going to play a
Jim,
lot
it's going to be
smarter.
bad drafting teams that do that. And
Right.
and who's picking at 2 overall?
Hmm.
Cleveland.
The Cleveland Browns.
They're historically a bad drafting team.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, when you got something like this year, like Travis Hunter, maybe Abdul Carter's there, maybe Cam Ward, we'll see how the number 1 pick pans out. But that's the kind of selection they're picking second overall. You can't screw it up if you pick one of those 3. Nobody's
Right.
gonna be mad at you. But if you don't happen to get a Cam Ward and you take, let's just say Travis Hunter, they take Travis Hunter.
Hmm.
Do they feel pressured now? We have to do something. We have to get a quarterback to groom and develop. Doesn't typically work in Cleveland, but that's going to be the mentality. Now, do they rush and they say, "Oh, you know what? We're going to trade back into the first round and then take whatever." Let's say Shador Sanders. They trade back in. They got Travis Hunter, and now they're going to pair him up with his teammate, his buddy. They trade back
Mhm.
in. Maybe they trade ahead of Pittsburgh to make sure they get Shador,
Mhm.
and they make that move. We're not going to know until 3 years later where we can pass judgment on whether that
Right.
was a good decision or not. But being in the fact of the matter is that these quarterbacks, all of them, Cam Ward included, they all need development at the next level.
Mhm.
And there's no sure shot that you're going to be like plug and play and it's going to be all good after that. So I just I hope that teams kind of really hone in and I know it's tempting. I know it's very tempting to make it happen, but just wait. Be patient. A
Right.
lot of the better drafting teams sit there and wait, and they just wait until good prospects happen to fall to them.
Mhm.
If you don't get your quarterback this year, like let's think about it this way.
Mhm.
For all the quarterback needy teams, out of all of them, is there one team that they just need a quarterback and then they could probably contend for a Super Bowl?
I think Pittsburgh is close. I think they did really well last year, even with Russell Wilson. I think they could contend. I'm not saying they're definitely, but I mean we've seen other teams
Well,
that have
they're
been
picking
wild card teams make a push
you're
that win the Super Bowl.
you're talking about a
So
team that's picking 21. I'm talking about
yeah.
teams that are
Oh, for
quarterback
a
needy teams
quarterback
that
needy.
are
Well,
in
it's
the top
complete.
end of the
Well,
draft
oh, in the top. Well,
that
what
need
the
a
thing is
quarterback.
with the Browns, you kind of saw a flash of that. You see, this is the reason why they brought back Joe Flacco because he had success with them coming off the couch and playing for them and made a playoff run when their defense was actually playing well too. On top of it, so if you can pair that defense and get that offense going, they could be a viable contender. I think.
I'm just gonna say the answer is no. It doesn't matter. They're not a quarterback away to be going to play for a Super Bowl this year. So, with that being said, you don't need to get your guy this year. You can wait till next year. They've already made preemptive strikes to add those veteran quarterbacks to go along with this season. So if you can continue to fill out your roster where you have holes, and then next year maybe it looks a lot better for you, and you get your guy for the future next season, and now you're starting to really, get back into the swing of things in the winning ways that franchise used to have so many years ago.
Right.
But
Well, the thing is too with some of this though is if you're a quarterback needy team, especially a couple of these, um, there is no wait until next year either. I mean, look at the Giants for one. I mean, there is no wait till next year. We can grab a guy next year because it looks like these two guys with Joe Shane and Brian Dable, their jobs are on the line. So they have to do something at one point.
it's a
Now,
different
like you
situation.
said, if they overreach again, say if they're one of the scenarios that they draft at 3 or they decided to trade out because they are taking calls too for that pick, what do? Do they trade back a little bit and try and get some more draft stock and then they feel comfortable just sliding a couple of different slots back but still in front of these other teams that might potentially get a quarterback and get one of these guys? Or do they grab right there? You're in the top 3, so there's excellent talent right there where you're going to get a top guy, whether it be Abdul Carter, whether it be Travis
Right.
Hunter, or God forbid something happens with the draft to where the Saints or the Titans and the Browns don't grab Cam Ward or something, and then all of a sudden at 3, Cam Ward's there for some reason, right?
Mhm.
They could still pick there.
But that
But again,
right.
do they just wait to the second round or they try to leapfrog it back in? Because the one thing that I think is an outlier that's kind of tricky is the Cleveland Browns pick first in the second round. So they have that pick there, so they can. Some team might want to come up and get that or trade back a little bit to have that first pick Friday night, and then advance into the first round again to try and grab their quarterback. So I think that's an interesting scenario then too. And then if you look at these other teams, if they don't pick quarterback early on and they want to try and leapfrog in front of Cleveland, that would be the spot.
Yeah. So I mean, bottom line, if you're picking that high in the draft, there's a reason for it, and you're not a winning team.
Right,
You got a
right,
long way to go. So
right.
you're not going to be able to fix this in one draft.
Mhm.
As much as some teams are trying to, like you said, like with the Giants, the coaching staff is trying to save their jobs and everything. That's a completely different situation. But they still have a long way to go as a team. Like
Mhm.
they're not, even if they hit on a quarterback, even if they do, and they get their guy of the future this year, they still need plenty of other pieces in order for them to return back to that playoff,
Right.
caliber team. So you're picking behind the draft. You got a long ways to go. You got lot of holes to fill. So one quarterback rushing that judgment, going to pick a developmental quarterback that honestly is going to take 2 or 3 years to develop to see what he could end up possibly being. And then in the end of it all, if you do go up and you invest heavily at that quarterback position and it fails, that's the end of your job anyway. So
Mhm.
don't rush judgment. Don't kind of, I know the pressure is there for a lot of those teams, but in this class, man, just don't overdraft. There's no reason to.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, there's scenarios where some of this can change, and you don't know where they might draft some of these quarterbacks. And especially if you look at the Titans, right? Um, they've again, Callahan will be his second season here. Maybe he's
Mhm.
what he saw last year that he's totally dead set against Will Levis. You know what I mean? So he's going quarterback, first overall pick. That's all we've heard too. But what if the scenario is that he feels like, again, same situation with some of these players that, well, am I splitting hairs? Do I think I could still develop this guy? He's more of a guy that kind of like that I feel like I can mold into what I want. And do I just grab best available player at number one overall pick and then try and advance back in, or something like that? That could be at this point a surprise scenario, but I think it's still a viable scenario for the Titans. I don't think exactly that Cam Ward is exactly a lock for the Titans at this point.
Well,
That's what we a lot, but
based on the Tennessee Titans' actions leading
Mhm,
up to this point, it's pretty much a 99% lock
mhm,
that Cam Ward's going to Tennessee. They've canceled other visits with potential quarterbacks like Shador Sanders. Like they were going to be looking at him this week before 30-day visits was concluded,
mhm,
and they canceled it. And why would you cancel his, you know, visit when, you already had it scheduled? So
mhm,
it along with the fact of how much attention they've given Cam Ward. I mean,
mhm,
through this whole draft process, it's been all him. They've been focusing on him, doing every little bit of homework they possibly could, had long meetings with him after his pro day, and it doesn't seem they're giving the same attention to any other player except for maybe Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. But
mhm.
that makes a lot of sense when they're like
Right.
one and two best players in the draft anyway. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think there is a sliver of a change that could maybe entice Bill Callahan. That maybe he has a different mindset and says, you know what, he's only had one season with Will Levis. I understand he made this bad mistakes and all that, but he's still developing as a rookie, or not a rookie, but he's still developing as a young quarterback too,
Mhm,
to where maybe he's thinking, well, hold on, I only got to work with him one season. Let's see what happens if, I continue to work with him, develop him. Maybe this season it's a complete turnaround. He understands the offense a little bit better, is a little bit more comfortable,
mhm,
and they've already started to reconstruct that offensive line. So add some more weapons, get a stellar defensive player in the top of the first round. Let's start building around Levis. Let's start reconstructing that defense and then see where we can go. Do we have to take quarterback now? We don't really have to, but it comes down to the fact of how they view Will Levis. Are they completely out on him and saying, "We didn't draft him. He's not our guy. We have no ties to him, so we can just move
mhm.
on."
Yeah.
Or is it the other way, like you're thinking, where hold on a second, let's work with them a little bit longer, maybe a couple, this season and next year before we make any hasty decisions, and instead, let's just get best player available throughout this draft.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Pittsburgh, when we cover them quick, I think the outlier with that is the whole Aaron Rodgers scenario. The fact that they haven't grabbed anybody else except for Mason Rudolph, and they have got Skylar Thompson, I think, is their other quarterback there. So this is what you're going into the season with. You said no on Russell Wilson again, which he got you to the playoffs last year.
Mhm.
Justin Fields is now going to play with the Jets, and again, still a young quarterback, still a lot to work with. You said no on that as well. So you got all your eggs in one basket, and that's said Aaron Rodgers. And so if you don't, so what is your play in the first round? I mean, do you have to try and trade up if you're Pittsburgh, or you think they're going to play it out and see where they are, that we are going to see these guys slide? At least everybody, like we said, expected past Cam Ward right now. And do they go quarterback there at 21? Or again, do they just say, maybe we'll let it ride? I think it all swings on whether we hear an answer, I think, from Aaron Rodgers, I guess, at this point, right?
I don't think that has any bearing on what Pittsburgh's going to do in the draft at all. I think that they're one of those teams that, yes, they need a quarterback of the future. They've never really been able to develop with Mike Tomlin there. They've never been able to develop a quarterback and have that future, with them. But
Right.
so I really think that for Pittsburgh, there's no way they're trading up. I can't envision. Pittsburgh typically doesn't do that. Their organization never trades up. They let the draft come to them. If anything, they would trade back and try to get an extra pick or two. But for Pittsburgh, I don't think the Rodgers fiasco, whatever you want to call it, I don't think it has any indication of what Pittsburgh's going to do for this draft. They know that they need a quarterback of the future. They are very, they're there. Like the coaching staff knows. But I don't think this is the type of organization that rushes into decisions and judgments and does never panics either. So I think in this draft, they understand that, yeah, there's a chance Shador slides all the way to them. Do they love Shador to even take him? They could still go running
Mm-hmm.
back. They could go on the defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ways that they could go. Linebacker, because it's basically linebacker you at Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so I think that they're going to take best player available at 21, but I just have no indication on how much they love Shador or if they
Yeah.
even like him.
Or if they
Just
even
don't.
like him or not. Right.
So it's gonna that's what makes this draft in particular so interesting, is because there's so many variables with every single pick. It's not even just the scenarios we're talking about with these teams, but with every single pick, you just really don't know how each organization is going to view these prospects or how they have them rated.
Right. And I think that's the thing here with Pittsburgh though too, is because like again, when you have a quarterback room like that where you already you kept competing and making the playoffs, how do you tell fans that you're going into the season with, if it's, Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, whatever, they already know what Mason Rudolph is. He did okay for them,
Yeah.
and then again kind of,
Yeah.
fizzed out,
He's
didn't
average.
really pan out. Because they drafted him, they put him out there to see what he looked like, moved on, went to Tennessee for a little bit, seemed like he did okay there at times when they needed him, and now he's back here with Pittsburgh. But he's not going to get you to the playoffs.
No, he's an average quarterback.
Right. So, I mean, again, fans are going to look at this and be like, what are we doing here if we don't get quarterback? And if they don't expect him to try and start or see what we can do with this, what is it? Is this, on Tomlin? What are we doing here with the Steelers here? If the fans are going to go crazy.
Well, here's the thing is the Steelers screwed this up from the start. They had an opportunity where they could easily re-sign Russell Wilson. They decided to, just kind of let him string out there, let him test free agency, let him take his visits. we're gonna and they also did the same thing with Fields. They
Yeah.
didn't even bring back either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us here at Football on the Know, all of us expected them to at least sign one of them back. You
Right.
know, and then you have something to continue with. You can go into the draft and then draft someone to sit behind them.
Right.
It would have made all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
But they screwed up by not re-signing Fields or Russell Wilson. They got caught in a catch-22, and now they're without both of them. And they're now relying on a aged guy who's damn near close to retiring, Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers, to come back for one more year. And he's not even sure what he's doing. So
Right.
they're waiting on his decision, and all the while, the draft is creeping up. Does is that going to pressure Pittsburgh at 21 to say, you know what? Which one do you like? Do you like Shador? Do you like Jackson Dart? Because that's another name that's being pushed up
Mhm.
into the first round. Jackson Dart's another
Mhm.
guy. Do they love Jackson Dart to where like, hey, we can sit at 21 and if Dart's there, then that's our guy and that's going to be our pick. But I've heard a lot of scenarios where Pittsburgh doesn't go quarterback at all in the first round, and instead they add some youth to the running back, position. They
Mhm.
add some youth to that linebacking position, the D line, corners. So they have other needs where they could address it, and it would be a BPA type of situation, and it would make sense. I don't think I know Steeler fans don't want to hear it, but don't panic if the Steelers don't choose quarterback.
Mhm.
Just don't. There's a reason why somehow, some way, it doesn't matter what happens for Mike Tomlin. He figures out a way to win. Just always figures out a way. Whether it's a issue with quarterbacks, because they've been here before,
Yeah.
where they kind of
Yep.
rotated quarterbacks and they still figured out a way. So um, I don't know. Does that mean maybe if Rodgers doesn't work out and the draft they're like, we don't like any of these quarterbacks, does that now turn into like, hey, what's a quarterback that another team has that we could trade for? There's also that scenario that no one really talks about.
Right.
Listen, the Raiders just did it.
Mhm.
Geno Smith was on
Mhm.
Seattle. Never anticipated that to happen. The Raiders pulled the trigger. They traded for a starter in Geno Smith. Now they have an answer at the quarterback position, at least for this year.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not crazy to think maybe Pittsburgh does it if they get desperate. It's something to think about.
Right. I mean, I haven't looked at their cap space, but do you think Kirk Cousins comes into play in this after this scenario then?
That situation, I think, I just don't see it happening.
Mhm.
I
Again,
don't see
just
Kirk
even with
Cousins going
the
anywhere
cap hit and the
because
money.
as much as there's been differing reports about Terry Fontenot with Atlanta Falcons saying, "No, no, no, I'm not trading him. He's gonna be our backup," to, "Well, nope, maybe behind closed doors, he's kind of, like, taking phone calls and seeing what he can get for him." You're not gonna get nothing for him because of that contract,
Mhm.
and Atlanta's not gonna pick up the tab so they can
Yep.
just get rid of him.
Yep. Yep.
It defeats the purpose. So I don't envision a trade happening for Kirk, at least not this year. Next year's a different story.
Mhm.
But again, that's another team that it's a possibility, Jim. It,
Yeah.
it definitely is. Like we've
Well,
seen crazier things happen. We've seen freaking Russell Wilson get cut, you know, 1 year into his new deal, and
yeah. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly,
and
right?
take on that dead money. But man, it's one of those things you could really hurt your franchise too in the long run. So I think it's another interesting thing, and maybe Pittsburgh does get desperate enough to where they're like, screw it, we'll take the contract, we'll give you a higher pick, because desperation, if that does creep in, then they're gonna do something erratic.
Yeah, yeah, I know. So, and you try and think of what other scenarios could be out there with that. If again they don't go quarterback first round, who there's still some guys that are serviceable still in free agency, to kind of do something with, maybe again if they feel like, um, you know, They really don't believe in Mason Rudolph, because again, I'm sure they grabbed him because he's familiar with the area, this and that.
Right.
They know what he is. He has had some success with them. And then potentially to try for somebody else out there. Again, take a shot at Aaron Rodgers, but
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Jacoby Brissett. They get real desperate.
mhm.
There's it, I mean, you never want to do that as a last resort at this point in the season. You don't want to like say, "Oh, well, let's go see what's available," in the
Right.
free agency. And
Well, yeah, because you're already kind of start late now as it is, and that's the thing with Aaron Rodgers too as well. You're starting late, and one thing that you didn't even see just because of lack of play time on his end with the Jets is they weren't on the same page with each other ever. You know what I mean? It's not that he can't learn another playbook, especially Arthur Smith's playbook. It's pretty cut and dry.
yeah,
That it's going to be, hey, I got to get in with these guys. We got to get used to each other. Familiarity and get it going. And if you're
right.
waiting this long, I mean, come on, it's not going to be helpful for the team altogether, anyways. Few comments here. We've got Tom Leiter, who during your list here talking about Travis Hunter. He said not often you see a guy who can play both sides. He'll go top 5. And Anthony's in the house with us tonight. He goes,
What's going on, Anthony?
Joe, there he goes. He says, Joe, what should Atlanta do with the quarterback situation? As we were just kind of talking about Kirk Cousins a little bit
I
here.
think they screwed up. I think they screwed up. Like I kind of just mentioned it a little bit earlier, but they had an opportunity to move on from Kirk Cousins. It would have been really difficult to figure out a way to like maneuver around that contract. Maybe Atlanta kind of eats some of those guarantees, and that kind of makes it a little bit easier to move on from him. But they had to do it earlier. When they made the decision to say Michael Penix is our guy, he's going to be the starter, Kirk is going to be the backup. When they said that, it was time to make a move. It was time to start getting on the horn, calling other teams that need quarterback and saying, hey, Pittsburgh, do you like Kirk Cousins? He's available. What are you offering? Like that would have been the time to make a deal work, because before free agency hit, they could have had those conversations, and then maybe a deal would have been done right as free agency started. And we're like, whoa, like Kirk's on his way to somewhere else. So they missed the boat on it. Is that simple. Now they're in a very difficult situation where Terry Fontenot has made a stance, said that he was going to be the backup, was going to stay with Atlanta, and now it seems like maybe he's kind of regretting that decision, and now is thinking, well, maybe I get on the phone now and try to work some magic and possibly get a deal. But with that contract, it makes it difficult to move him right now.
All right, we've got another comment. We got William Del Pilar is in the house with us tonight. He says, where will Kirk Cousins land at? So there you go. He's asking about Kirk Cousins as well.
Yeah, not landing anywhere right now. I mean, it's just not going to happen. That contract and the fact that the Atlanta Falcons have pigeonholed themselves into lack of opportunity, really. Like you had a bunch of quarterback needy teams that were looking for free agent quarterbacks. That would have been the time to strike while the iron's hot. That would have been the time to get on the phone and say, hey, you give us a 5th rounder or 6th rounder or whatever, and we're going to send you Kirk Cousins. And now you have an answer at quarterback. That would have been the time to do it. But the fact that they sat on their hands and now they're in a spot where teams have moved on. Giants signed not one, but 2 quarterbacks to kind of fulfill that position. Cleveland, they traded for Kenny Pickett. They also signed Joe Flacco. Tennessee, we're assuming, is going to take Cam Ward. That like, and then you go and then look at the Raiders. They traded for a quarterback in Geno Smith. So all the teams that were really going to be in dire need of that quarterback position, they've already got their answers now, at least for this year anyway. So now you've kind of ran out of, options to the point where, what are you doing now? You're stuck. Like, unless, like I said, unless Atlanta is going to sweeten the deal maybe when it comes to Pittsburgh, if Pittsburgh ends up getting frustrated and saying, "We're done waiting for Rodgers to decide," come on, let's work out a deal. Maybe Atlanta said, "Okay, we'll work out a deal. You give us a pick. We'll take a little bit off the guarantees. We'll take half of the guarantees. We'll eat half of it, so it kind of helps you guys out too,
Mhm.
and move on from them." That's the only way I could see anything kind of happening right now because Atlanta kind of just shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, they did with it. Yep, and he's kind of sitting there in limbo. You talk about some of these quarterbacks
And
like that in those
the other
situations.
well, the other thing too that bothers me is that Kirk Cousins himself, how come he didn't ask for a trade, request a trade?
Mhm.
When he heard that saying, "Oh, you're gonna be a backup." Well, dude, I'm getting up there a little bit. Like, I can
Yeah.
still play right now, but I don't wanna be a backup to nobody. So
Right.
send me somewhere where I can start or at least have an
Yeah,
opportunity
having the
to.
opportunity. That's the thing, and that's what I think. What I think starts the conversation and why everybody's even asking the same question, because I think most people see Kirk Cousins as still a viable quarterback that can get you to the playoffs, because he's even done it and what he's done. And just, I think the last couple of seasons, because of injuries, have really kind of geared his career in a different direction here, and kind
Mhm.
of it makes him look bad. But I don't think he all of a sudden got bad overnight. It's not all of a sudden he just his play just dropped off the face of the planet. I think again he has been getting banged up a little bit more. He's got the shoulder issue, and that's what part of it. So I think now completely healthy, I think he can be that quarterback for a team, especially if you need one right there. That you are Pittsburgh. That I feel like if you did get a Kirk Cousins there, that sets you on a better trajectory than drafting a quarterback right now, and trying to still make a playoff run here, because that's the scenario a lot of people are always trying to look at. That's the perfect scenario
Yeah.
that people like. You get the in-house quarterback that you have, or you grab your stopgap, and then you have the new guy waiting and ready to go. So things like having, Matthew Stafford, right now he's aging, questions were on his contract, what was going to go on here with him and the Rams. Was he going to go somewhere else? Was he going to retire? Blah, blah, blah. Now he's there with the Rams, but again, what's their future after Matthew Stafford? Again, is he going to be a bridge quarterback for somebody else, or they wait until next year and then figure out, like, they're another team that the Rams, you don't really question them on that, because when we have, they kind of just make us look silly anyways. They kind of just find a way to do it and they figure it out, and they revamp, and then they're back at it. They're still competing for a championship or a playoff spot. So when you see a scenario like this, like I said, with Pittsburgh, especially, to where they made the playoffs last year, you had two quarterbacks there that did well for them last season, didn't keep either of them. And then you turn to Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, and then now you're waiting on Aaron Rodgers. And if you don't, what do you do? You know what I mean? And what does your season look like? And with ownership and Mike Tomlin having, he's been there forever. You know what I mean? And they believe in him, and I don't think they'll run him out the house and stuff like that. And again, he's probably in their future plan still. So even if they lay an egg somehow this season, again, don't do well, they're down in the division. He comes back and they grab the quarterback next year, everything's fine. But
So things are
Steeler
looking
Nation don't exactly fall for that stuff though either.
things are looking pretty bleak if you're gonna go to free agency. You got guys like Carson Wentz, Easton
That's who
Stick,
was I had, I
DJ
guess, number
Beathard,
one.
Teddy Bridgewater, Jeff
Mhm.
Driscoll, Brett Rippon. You get the picture.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
nobody
exactly.
of starter caliber right now.
Mhm.
Rodgers is the only guy that you could say, well, he could give us a
He's got one more in him,
a bump, right?
right?
Like,
You think.
you know, eh, other than that, like, then it does get to desperation. Then it
Yep.
does get to, like, if Rodgers does, let's just say if he decides to retire, because
Mhm.
that's been in his mind. If he decides not even to go to a team, like we've heard also Rodgers is maybe contemplating if the Saints are interested, he'd like to go there too, you know? So,
Mhm.
if Rodgers decides not to go to Pittsburgh, you can't honestly tell me that Pittsburgh is saying, "We're comfortable with starting, Mason Rudolph." Like, they've said that, actually.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, they said that, and I'm like, I don't believe that for 1 second. And I don't think the Steeler fans do either.
No,
I mean,
because we've
I
been there, done that, and I
you
get that.
gotta
They
have an
have
answer,
yeah.
and this is the issue for Pittsburgh. This is the one thing out of the teams that we're talking about, the Saints, the Giants, um, Browns, they made moves. Pittsburgh still hasn't,
Mhm.
and that's the problem is now I feel like the pressure's mounting, for the Steelers to the point where they're like, at some point, something's gotta give. Whether they give up on the Rodgers sweepstakes and try to maybe call Atlanta and see what they
Mhm.
could do, or maybe even a different team we're not even thinking about.
Right. Right. So I mean it's interesting. We're gonna find out next week either way. Saints don't know what's gonna go down with Derek Carr and fans, like I said, and it's out there on the podcasts that are all there connected with the Saints that Rattler, they still think that there's something there with Rattler, or they at least feel like the quarterbacks that are in this draft class are either worse or around his trajectory. So
Well,
why
that's
not
the
just stick with
thing.
what you got and not waste a pick on him? So
That's exactly the thing. If if you're looking at a guy who has had 1 year of playing experience and not even a full year, like, it was only
mhm,
because Carr got hurt, he got thrusted in there. Same thing with Jacob Hayner, who's the 3rd
mhm,
string guy,
mhm,
and both guys are developing. Spencer's new to the team, so there was some things he did that were like, "Okay, that's not bad," but then, obviously he made mistakes because he's a rookie, and you have to continue to develop him, though, to see what you really do have,
mhm.
and I don't know, like, I understand Mickey Loomis, the owner, does not want to just say, we're just gonna forego this season and not even try." Of course, that's not the, you know, thought process, but all teams at times go through this situation similarly, and it's kind of one of those seasons where it's like, "Well, didn't go our way at all. We're gonna still try to win, but we know in the back of our minds that this season's toast." So, I don't know. It might be for the Saints unless they can pull something off. It's gonna be enticing. Make sure you tune into the draft because it's not gonna be from lack of entertainment. I'll tell you that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Joe, all right, that's it for our show tonight. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find Football on the No Show? Of course, I got the QR code right there, so it's just as easy as that. You can just scan the freaking QR
Just
code. I
scan the
mean, how
QR
easy? I just
code,
hand it right to you.
you know?
You know, but
Or if you're a
if you don't want to do
traditionalist,
that, that's fine. You
if you're
know,
a traditionalist, you
yeah,
can head over to YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, do it the old-fashioned way,
yeah.
and, make sure while you're there, hit the thumbs up, share it to all your family and friends. Anybody that loves football, listen, we love all our know-it-alls. They come in every single week you know, without missing a beat. Anthony, Tom, those 2 guys were like crazy for us today.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of fun with this. Want you guys to be a part of it. We are growing. We're growing slowly, but we're still growing. Really appreciate everybody that did stop in, that did comment. And again, any of the mock or any of the top 10 lists that I've made up to this point. Now, quarterbacks is happening next week. That'll be the final position. Um, but if you guys have any questions, make sure you drop down in the comments below, whether it be a player or maybe my list. Maybe you had an issue with it. Whatever the case may be, we want to hear from you guys.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.